G'day, guys. Welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the 2023 Fremantle team preview. I have a special guest on with me today. You'd recognise him from our last two team previews with the Sydney and GWS previews. So I would like to welcome on again Dan Mashman, aka Freo Tragic. How you going, mate? Thank you very much for joining us again.
Pleasure. Thank you. No spills today, but I think we can get it done without him. He's a very, very busy man, our Spills. So, yeah, we'll just see how we go without him. He's always got a bit of great insight, our Spills. He's a sensible man, isn't he, when it comes to SuperCoach? He doesn't overthink things too much, I don't think. I think he goes with his heart a bit and, he's backing in players he likes, like Parrish and stuff. So I like good on him,
That's right, mate. Look, we can get through without the great man today because, look, the difference between the last couple of previews that you've come on for is the fact that you are an actual Freo man. We know you're not a Swans or Giants supporter. You are a Freo man at heart. So, look, One thing I'm really interested in is how you actually became a Freo supporter because they haven't been in the league for a really long time. So tell us a bit about your history with the Fremantle Football Club, mate.
Well, yeah, I was there from day dot, really. I had to say it, but those very early 90s premierships for West Coast, I was barracking for West Coast back then. But I was always a South Fremantle supporter, which is a waffle club. They've got the same colours, actually, as Sydney. They're red and white. And so I followed them in the waffle. And as soon as there was wind of a Fremantle team, I was onto them. It led to 20 years of pain, as most Freo supporters will, attest to, because there wasn't a whole lot of success. Obviously, Fyfe winning a couple of Brownlows, and we made a grand final in, I think it was 14, we almost went undefeated one year. I think it was 14 or 15 as well. So we've had a few good runs at it, but the first 15 years were shocking. We never really got anywhere. We had a very experimental coach, Nishan, to begin with, and he had all these wild ideas about, basketball strategies and all sorts of weird stuff that, looked brilliant for half a quarter occasionally, and we'd take it up to these sides and then we'd just get absolutely pounded in the second half. But it's been a great ride. I love supporting Freo. I think our fans are a bit different to your average. There's the bongo drums at the game and the Purple Army. There's a few sort of ponytails and yoga and patchouli sniffing people down there. So in Fremantle, so yeah, they're quite different. But I really enjoy that sort of slightly alternative vibe at the football. I think something footy hasn't really had before, and I think it's interesting that we bring that, in force now with the new stadium and stuff. So yeah, I've never actually been to the new stadium. I'd love to get over to Perth for it. I've seen Freo play obviously up here at the SCG and stuff. But yeah, usually when we play the Giants, we play them in Canberra for some reason. There must be a few Freo politicians that want to see them down there. So I don't get to see them against the Giants much. For some reason, we always play them in Canberra, which is, 3 hours from Sydney by car. It's not exactly the most, amazing city to visit for, it's not like I'm going to
Melbourne there to Canberra
with a bit of nightlife or something. Yeah, Canberra. But yeah, that's kind of it, really. It's I watch every game. I pretty much watch every game of AFL every week. If it's, as a replay, even if I sort of know the results, if I'm not sure about certain, fantasy picks, SuperCoach picks, I'll go back and watch portions of games to get a better read on players and what their roles are and stuff. So, yeah, I'm right into it and have been for quite a number of years. I think SuperCoach really brings your appreciation of AFL to a different level. It gives you something in every game to watch. If it's not a player you own, it's one that maybe your opponent has that week, and
Yeah.
you're wishing him down a little bit, or it might just be someone that you're looking at getting in because they've been on a bit of a roll or got a new role in the team. So it just brings a whole heap of interest to AFL. I mean, I was already, well into the footy, but finding SuperCoach has really, just made it special for me. Yeah,
Absolutely, and a very brave move because look, I'm obviously not living in WA, but I do know a lot about the rivalry and switching from West Coast to Freo, a very big move there, mate. Did you lose any friends over this big move?
Yeah, we've got mates that we hardly talk to about it, but I've got a couple of mates. There's a lot of my mates that are still West Coast supporters back there, but a few of my mates, one's West Coast supporter, the other's a big Freo man, and they basically get 2 memberships each and then just wax so they can go to the footy every week. So, one will bring one to the Freo game and then he'll bring him. So, it's interesting. It's kind of a bit of a friendly rivalry, but I mean, there are houses in WA that are split down the middle on Derby Day, and one son or one kid's with the dad, and the mum's face painted up the daughter, and there's like tape down the middle of the house so that
don't cross.
There's no fights, But it is a big thing. That those weekends I remember back in WA are huge weekends of football when the Derby's on, and you could go out and drive your car around. I think, you could basically run around naked outside because there's no one out there. Everyone's in watching football. You wouldn't get in trouble. You could drive your car down the middle of the freeway the wrong way and there wouldn't be anyone there. So, basically, I just love following football, really.
Beautiful, mate. Well, look, we are here to talk SuperCoach, so let's get into it. Let's start talking about some of these players. We are going to start off in defence, and there is a man that I am pretty keen on, but after the first practice match, I do have a few question marks. It's Hayden Young, 508,200. A 2022 snapshot, he had 8 scores between 80 and 90, 6 scores of 100 plus, and 4 scores below 80. We can see there he has a couple of ticks there. His average is ticking up each year, 52 up to around the mid-70s, up to a 90-odd last year. And the reason why I'm pretty keen on this pick for 2023 is the kicking chart that we can see here, mate. So we all know that Luke Ryan has always had the monopoly on these kick-ins, but there has been a little bit of talk this year that Hayden Young may be getting a little bit more of the lion's share. So tell us what you think about Hayden Young and whether or not you think he's going to be a good starting pick this year for us, mate.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are hoping Hayden Young gets a bigger share of the kick-ins. I haven't heard from anyone, let alone a coach, that's actually said that he will get a bigger share. I mean, people sort of expect, yes, he's a great kick. They expect him to take that responsibility. But, I've actually owned and watched Luke Ryan very closely. And the guy is just one of those guys with white line fever. Like, as soon as he crosses that line, he's like, give me that ball, get out of my way. He's ordering everyone else around. He's shouting at people. He's like Heath Shaw, he's got a whole lot of attitude when he's on the pitch. And I just can't see him, calling Hayden Young in from 20 metres away and throwing him the ball at a kick in and he'll walk off into the pocket. He's just not, unless he's specifically told by the coach to give more kick-ins to Hayden Young. I can see Hayden Young getting, a fair bit more of Cox's kick-ins maybe. Like Cox has still got 46 or 48 for the year, played on 46 times. So, that's like close to 50 kick-ins. If he gets them, he's up into the 70s, which is, an extra 2 kick-ins a week is considerable. The only other thing about Hayden Young, like absolute talent, we all know he's going to be one of those elite footballers. But if you look at his games played there, he's only played about 10 more games than Dacos. He's been in the system a few more years, but he hasn't, like last year was by far his, he's still, as far as experience goes, he's a very young player. he's just ticked over 30 games. I mean, at the end of this year, he'll be he'll be cracking that 50 game mark, and that's when I really see him taking that next step. I think it's a bit early to expect that from him this year. If he played most of those games the last 2 years, perhaps I'd think differently. But I just think there's a lot of points to go around. There's not a whole lot of points to go around in that Freo backline. Ryan is still putting up close to premium numbers. He's good for a 90-95. You've got guys like Jordan Clark that averages like 80, 85. You've got even Cox himself averages an 80. Like a lot of these guys in that backline, Heath Chapman was about a 75. I expect him maybe to go to an 80, 85. There's a lot of guys there that can score points. Apart from Big Pierce, everyone else in that backline is a half-decent super scorer. They're not a premium as such, but there's not too many guys there that just don't really, use the ball or have a dig. So, unfortunately, I won't be picking him this year. I just think you just look at possession counts and everything and ownership, and Dacos is a much safer pick. He may cop a bit of attention. Any decent player has that risk. Any primo that we've got has that risk. Dacos has got the upside with his price. Realistically, any of those top guys, Sicily's probably least likely to get tagged. Stewart can get tagged. Someone might jump on Doc if he starts getting dominant for a quarter or something. Sinclair definitely has been tagged in the past. Dawson, they've tried to tag him. He's moved up the ground. So I just think when you're looking at any of these defenders, there's a tag risk there. It's not, like I said, it won't happen every week. But, I just think if people are talking down Dacos, it's over a tag risk. It's something that's just there for everyone. So I wouldn't be so worried about that.
Because I think for a lot of people now, it's a choice probably between Young or Dacos. I know lots of coaches now are gravitating towards at least one of these 600K defenders. I think things have probably changed in the last 1 to 2 weeks. So for me, if we're comparing Young and Dacos, you do have to look at the ownership. It's a much safer pick. It's a defensive pick, I think, the Dacos pick. So what I was really hoping with Young is for almost him and Ryan to swap over that kicking percentage there. But it looks like that's not going to be realistic. And the reason why I also had the 8 scores there between 80 and 90 was that if he can pick up, say, 3 to 4 more kick-ins per game, then that's pretty much getting those scores 100 plus. So that was the real attraction to me. But it sounds like what you're saying is it may even be a case of whoever's closest to the ball could take the kicking. You've got Ryan, Cox, Chapman, Young. We can see even a Wilson there. Only a few kick-outs, but there's lots of players that are capable of taking those kick-ins. So if you compare it with a Melbourne team,
his kickings will go up. But this is another thing I was discussing with you off air. I think more and more teams are looking at a bigger guy structurally to take the kick-ins, because if the ball's turned over after the kick-in, they like having that structure. That's why May takes a lot of kick-ins, not just because he's a good kick, but structurally he likes to be that last guy in defence. Same with the Stewart. Structurally, if the ball's turned over after the kick-in, you've got someone back there that knows how to position, that can take a big forward if he's nearby, that sort of thing. Whereas if you've got a smaller guy taking the kick-in, say like a Caleb Daniel or whatever, then structurally you're not as sound if the ball gets turned over. Like maybe Hayden Young will take ticket. I think he'll still take more kick-ins, but I think there's just more of a, just seems to be going more and more the way the AFL is doing it, is that these bigger guys are taking kick-ins if they're good users, like Sicily's and Stewart's and Mays, and these guys are given the responsibility because the structure then behind the ball is a little bit more sound if there is a quick turnover, rather than having a smaller guy sort of left on his own in the square having to deal with, an attacking play. anyway, yeah, look, I think Hayden Young will be future All-Australian. I can see him doing great things. He's already made the leadership group in his coming into his 4th year. So definitely a leader of our club in the future, and someone I'll be watching very closely. But unfortunately, I won't be picking him in SuperCoach. Probably next year, I'll take a really good look at him. Wouldn't surprise me if the last 4 or 5 games, especially if Orion or something goes down, that he does really kind of show what he can do and have some really good scores, back week to week. He's shown us he can score, but doing it consistently is really what you want to see. You want to see, a 90 floor and up to, say, a 120, 130, and, in that range for a 5 or 6 week period. And then you can be kind of a little bit more assured about picking them as a premium the following year.
Excellent. Great summary there, mate. Great summary. Are there any other defenders you quickly wanted to touch on before we jump straight into the midfield?
Not really. I mean, there's Luke Ryan. He's pretty... People that got on him late last year, he had some really great scores towards the end. He had a pretty flat patch in the middle. He's 531, but I just don't think you go there. He's still young enough and everything, and I don't think he'll decline too much. But there's more and more good, like I said, more and more good ball users coming out of that defence. And when he was doing, his proper primo days, these guys were all really young, or there just wasn't as many good guys around him. So I think you'd sort of avoid him because there's, your youngs are getting better, Chapman's, and guys like Jordan Clark are getting more of the ball. So, I wouldn't go there. Just quickly, I guess we could talk about Corey Wagner. Played at Port Melbourne last year. He's sort of a small defender, 25-year-old. People had him early in the year, got a bit injured. Will maybe get a run in the next practice match. I'm not 100% all over where he is with his fitness. He's probably still an injury away, or like I may have said before we started filming, he could be someone that came in, on a certain week if we needed an extra small defender. If a team we were playing had 2 really speedy guys, we've mainly, except for Walker, we don't have very many sort of small, fast guys to play that defensive role. Otherwise, someone like a Young or a Clark would have to try and lock down these speedy defenders. So he's more suited to that role. He can play that and still get possessions back the other way and still be quite damaging. He's got a really good step on him, and he's just a player. So a little bit of depth for us, but could be an interesting downgrade target if he comes along sort of week 5 or 6, which is
absolutely
kind of almost what you're hoping. If they don't debut, it's like just wait a few weeks and
not too soon.
yeah, exactly. So I think he might have mid defender. Oh God, what have I done?
He does. Yeah.
So, yes, he's got the mid defender too. So very handy to be able to get in as a downgrade option, be able to flip him maybe even in for a midfield rookie or something like that, and then you can have him to flip around guys like Jinby and Goda and other. When you're getting rid of those guys, you can flip him back up to defence and get in another midfield or something,
Terrific. So it may not actually be bad news that Wagner isn't playing round 1, because it seems like we do have a few other options down back. So maybe fingers crossed around 6 debut, when we're ready to make our first upgrade, could work out really, really well, mate. So, all right, great synopsis of the defence there. Let's move on now to the midfield, and I think this bloke is one of your favourite players in the comp. It's Andy Brayshaw, 615,600. If we look at his past SuperCoach averages there, tick, 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 tick. The scoring pattern is going up. Everything's looking really rosy for him at the moment. A 2022 snapshot had 13 scores above 100, 7 scores above 130, so does obviously have a decent ceiling there. One slightly concerning stat for me is that he did have 9 scores below 100. If we're comparing that to the uber elite, such as your Olivers and your Lairds, I think they only had a couple of scores under the ton. So a slight concern for me there. Season high, look at that ceiling, a 189. I believe that was very early on in the season, and a season low of 77, which isn't the worst, but probably something we don't want to see for a premium midfielder. But we can also see, sorry, before I move on, 64% CBAs in the last Pracky match. That was based off 4 quarters as well. I've got the safest houses symbol on there for Andy Brayshaw. Dan, do you agree with that? Do you think he's a safest houses pick? And are you currently looking to select him in your side this year, mate?
Yes, absolutely. I heard on Twitter that they're calling Andrew the Wagyu Brayshaw.
The Wagyu Brayshaw.
The Wagyu, because his brother's Angus and he's not quite as tasty. But yeah, Andrew Brayshaw, that guy's a gun. He just got, I mean, he won the most valuable player, the one that the players pick on the Brownlow night. I mean, he's 22 years old, and every AFL player, listed player, thinks that he's the best player in the league. So, I mean, when you've got your peers, I mean, he did that tackle that everyone's still talking about, where I think it was actually Luke Jackson he might have tackled, when he just ran that guy down with the last outstretched finger and, got a holding the ball call and basically won a game for us in the last few minutes. And he's just great to watch. He doesn't do anything spectacular. You know what I mean? Like, he's not like a Bont that you just look at him and you go, wow. But he just does
not a huge X factor, but yeah.
He just doesn't make that many mistakes, and he's just always there. And he tackles and he puts blocks on for his teammates. And he only really calls for the ball when he's in the clear. You don't see him sort of getting, calling for the ball and then getting tackled. Like, he's just a smart footballer. He's just good at lots of things without being spectacular. And I expect him only to get better. Just the way he plays and everything, maybe he doesn't sort of kick enough goals and stuff to sort of crack that 120. I think he might sort of still end up in the teens. I mean, Bont's is 116, 117 last year with a sort of lower CBA load, but his time on ground went up, considerably the year before and then last year again. So I think that's where he's getting his improvement in points. It's basically the more time he spends on field, the more he's going to average. He will bump that up a little bit again, but yeah, to find those extra points, I mean, we're going to have to keep winning lots of games and, potentially a little bit of scaling if he's involved in sort of close games at the end there when he's doing some good plays and he can, get a few extra points that way. But I've currently got him at M3 in my side.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very nice.
I just think when you're looking at guys around his price, you've got Steele, who I wasn't impressed with in the practice game, looks a bit skinny. He's lost some weight so he can run better, but I don't know if that suits his tackling game. I'm going to pass on him. You've got guys like Parrish, who had just multiple soft tissue stuff last year, ankles and calf. And I just think when you're paying up for a big mid, any little thing like that, the Parrish might be fine and come out and, absolutely destroy it the first 6 or 8 games next year. But if you're picking someone for the year, George is big on this. You don't want them breaking down in upgrade season and messing with your upgrade cadence and all that sort of stuff, So get in someone that you're just backing in for the year. Look at those games played. He rarely misses. I think he's missed 2 games in his whole career in 21. And
pretty crazy, yeah.
And I think that's when he got his jaw broken? Or maybe that
must have been. Yeah, must have been. So no soft tissue injury history or
nothing. Yeah, hasn't missed a beat during pre-season. Him and everyone's heard of. I don't know if you have, but if you heard of the Brayshaws in Perth at Christmas.
Oh, the runs that they do, absolutely, mate. Most professional family you'll find. Yeah,
they'll go out and do like 50 of them before lunch. and then
Nuts.
have
Yeah.
lunch and then go back out later on and finish it off. Or they do about 70 and then 30 or something. But you're doing 100-metre sprints with a bunch of guys. I think their other brother gets involved. He's still pretty fit. Yeah, Sarong joined them last year. Occasionally a couple of guys will come from the club, but most the Brayshaw boys will finish the 100, but most of the guys that show up, by about 70 or 80, they're just throwing their hands up and going for a beer. But these boys are hard, and that's just what you want. He's competitive. He's it's great to actually have a solid premium from your own team that you can whack in your team with a bit of confidence and cheer on every week. So it's been a while since I can say that. I mean, in the Fyfe years, I kind of avoided him because he was a big injury prone.
We'll get to him, yeah.
Which hurt me sometimes, but you're still happy because he's had a day out and you've won or whatever. But I'll back in Andy Brayshaw any day of the week.
Some pretty high praise. And as I said, lots of competition around the price. And I love that durability, the fact that he's only missed a couple of games, no major injury history there, looking to uptick every year with that average. So things are certainly looking in the right direction for him, mate. We'll get on to a couple of his midfield partners here. We've got Will Brodie and Jay Gromere, who has made his way across from Waverley. So Brodie will set you back 563,600. One of my best starting picks last year, turned into an absolute keeper, which was pretty unexpected for me, but a real bonus there. Jaeger, 472,400. So you're almost getting close to 100K discount there. Both attended a lot of CBAs during the last Pracky match. You can see Will Brodie 76% and Jaeger 80%. Brayshaw didn't have a huge amount of CBAs. I think it was mid-60s. So I'm not sure if things flip slightly, but are these two blokes in consideration whatsoever, you think, Dan, or players that we can skip due to so many of the other premium options that we can look at, mate?
Yeah, look, Will Brodie's an interesting one. I just don't think he gets to that next level as a midfielder when he's still got these time on ground issues and stuff. He doesn't have a great tank. You see the guys that are at that top echelon, and they've all got huge tanks. So I just think there's just not enough upside in him. Obviously, a great selection last year, and happy to have him at Freo. I think he's a real worker. I think he's an underrated clearance player. I think he can get in and under with the best of them, and his disposal isn't too bad. He's pretty limited with what he can do, but he tends to just play with his limitations, which I think is really important from a player that might not have great skill level. If they know how to just hit that 20-metre pass, handball it off rather than and kick it if they can. And I just think he's a solid player, but not for SuperCoach. There's no upside there, and you'd have to be his wife to pick him, I think, in SuperCoach. Because I just think that if he does have anyone that's picked him, it's probably her, or his girlfriend or his mum. How about
Jaeger? Look, the price for me is a little bit awkward there. He's cheaper than a Tom Green, but a lot more expensive than a Hopper. He's just somewhere in the middle there. What do you think? Is there any value here, given the fact that maybe his CBA camp was right down last year at the Hawks?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. There's definitely upside in the CBA count. The problem with Jaeger is, his age, and there's just no way in hell that he makes top 10 or 12 midfielder for the year and cracks 110. He's probably, I'm not sure what he's priced at, but he probably could get to that 100, 105. So there's probably maybe he makes 80K and stuff. But the problem with Jaeger is that he's just always managing those knees and his injuries and stuff. I just think if he pulls up a bit sore one day, we're quite happy to just leave him out for a week, and you put in an Erasmus or a Michael Johnson or something, and put him into his spot, and let him have a couple of weeks off so he's cherry ripe come hopefully finals. So that's the problem with Jaeger, just managed and age, and I think there's a little bit of upside with the price because of those CBA low, but you'd have to be pretty brave to pick him over you just pay up 50 or 60 grand and get a Tom Green in, or go down, save 150 grand and get a mid-pricer like I hate to say it, but someone like a Dom Sheed or, obviously Hoppers in most people's teams. But, no, not Jaeger. I like having him free.
Couldn't agree more. The next man we've got up here is Caleb Sarong. So in comparison to Jaeger, I think this bloke's got a lot more upside than him. Again, he's at a pretty awkward price to me, under 500K, which isn't too bad. But we've talked about this a lot, 50K more, and you're getting up to an Anderson, LDU, Tom Green type. So where do you sit on Caleb Sarong? We can see a tick there for his first year average in 2020, 81. Next year in 2021, only went up by around a couple of points. And then we saw about an 8-point gain last year in 2022. Had the 8 scores 100 plus, but 7 sub 80 scores. So seems like he's got a pretty low floor there. Season high of 127. And again, that floor is right on 53. So any interest this year in Caleb Sarong? Can you see him breaking out into one of the Uber Elite, mate?
Not Uber Elite. I think there's definitely upside there. I think he can get, he could probably just crack the ton. I think those low scores, I expect them to go up a bit. I think he's getting more time on ground. We've always managed our young midfielders with time on ground. You won't see anyone that's, less than 4 or 5 years experience with more than sort of 75% time on ground.
That's a good point with Freo.
You're not the midfielders. We just always manage their loads so that they're, at their best when they're there. And, maybe as he goes along, he's going to start getting a little bit more time on ground. I also think that he was kind of the one that we would send. I mean, you wouldn't call it a tagger, but he's our kind of caller. If someone's getting on a bit of a roll in the midfield, he sacrifices his own game for a quarter to try and nullify them. I think with Brodie a bit more settled, he might get that role a little bit more, which will free up Sarong to play his natural ball-winning game. So that might help with some of those lower scores as well. I think he can just do the unselfish thing and move on to a player for a quarter just to try and nullify him. So hopefully he won't be required to do that as much, and we'll see a few better scores from him. But someone to definitely bump up your draft. I think he's probably, at least get him at a 95. I'd be tempted to take him closer to 100 average just because I want him in my side. I mean, he's probably my favourite player at Freo. Him and Sean Darcy. Shrek is just great to watch, and we all love what he can do. And he's just an ungainly guy. Like anyone, I mean, he scored like 190, I think, in 2021, and not for any one moment of those 191 points did he actually look like a footballer. He just looks like, you know what I mean? Like he looks like a rockin' wrestler that they've just let loose on the pitch, put in a pair of boots and just said, go for it, man. And so he just lumbers around and somehow manages to score outrageous points and kick goals from weird angles. And he's great to watch. But, yeah, Caleb Sarong, back to him. He's another one that I think may crack an All-Australian Guernsey one day going into the future. He's there are a lot of people that rate him over in Melbourne and stuff, but he's a special player for his size, what he can do. He's got talent. He kicks it on both sides of his body. He's, he's just skillful, and another one that, you just don't sleep on if you're the opposition, because he can, if they're going to sit on Brayshaw, watch Sarong have a day out, because, I'm not sure they will try and sit on Brayshaw. Maybe they will, but we've got enough talented midfielders that, if you take down one, these other guys are going to step up for sure,
Love it, mate. Love it, mate. So possibly one for draft, one for the future for Classic. The last bloke we want to talk about before we look into the ruck line, there's a lot of discussion to have about the Freo rucks this year, is Matty Johnson. So 123,900 mid. Unfortunately, did play for Peel Thunder in the last Pracky match. He's been on lots of benches so far in the preseason, but do you have high hopes, Matty Johnson, getting a gig rounds 1, or like a
Yes.
Warner, for example, maybe a late downgrade option in the season?
We'll have to see what happens when we go into this proper practice match this weekend. If he's got, if he's at least part of that extended bench, I'd have more hope for him playing round 1. The way they set up for the first 4 quarters last week against Adelaide, he was nowhere to be seen. So that's not a great sign. No. Usually they've got extended benches there and stuff as well. So you'd think that maybe he would have got in that rotation if they were truly looking at him for a round 1 spot. I'm not sure if Erasmus is ahead of him or whether they've just, taking it easy on his loads or what the story is, but haven't had much news about him. I will look into him a little bit more, and if I find anything out, I'll comment at the bottom of the video, or I'll let you know, and you can, or pop something on Twitter or whatever. But he was one I was kind of expecting to get again. Although it is tight for like even wing spots and stuff that we've got opening up with, a guy like Akers leaving. I thought maybe he could get a wing spot, but there's, talk of other people, guys like Ethan Hughes, who's actually a mid defender as well, which we sort of skipped over him. He's 283K 700. Could get a wing spot. He's probably too awkwardly priced to score enough on a wing, but he'll be that defensive winger, and then O'Driscoll would be able to sneak more forward and be more on the attacking wing, if that makes sense. And Ethan will slide across and go, slide in with the defenders to cover if O'Driscoll's roaming forward. That's how I expect it to sort of roll there. Upsetting that we might not get Matty Johnson, but another one of these ones that he will play this year, and so he's a downgrade option. So the upside of not getting these rookies as starting picks could be that they're great downgrade options, and at that price, he could be great in round 5 or 6 as well if he doesn't play straight away.
100%. So maybe one to look forward to rather than start with at the moment, mate.
Well, you never know. He might get a bench spot, but I can't see him in the starting 18 at the moment for Freo. So if he does play, he's probably going to be one of those guys that comes off the bench into a wing rotation, maybe gets, 10, 15, 20% CBAs when other people are resting or something like that, because he is a good midfielder. But he'll mainly play, maybe roam between half forward and wing, which is, it's okay for a rookie, but, and a talented one, but, it's not like he's some rookie that's going to be playing halfback and he's a must-have.
All right, cool. Well, if that wraps up the midfield, I'm very, very keen to get into this next discussion because it's a Fremantle ruck line, and we've got a couple of interesting options this year. I owned this bloke last year and for a little while the year before. Sean Darcy, the man we affectionately know as Shrek, 562,200. We can see his SuperCoach averages there. Certainly didn't set the world on fire for his first 4 years, but then he goes from a 78.2 average all the way up to 118. Unfortunately, last year in 2022, lost 16 points off that average to just finish with a season average of 102. 2022 snapshot did have the 8 scores above 100, 4 scores over 130, 11 scores below 100, slightly concerning there. A season high of 178. One thing that we always associate with the big Shrek is a massive, massive ceiling. When this guy is on fire, he is absolutely on fire. And then we've got a season low there of 51. So there's always going to be some durability concerns with the big Shrek, but we know what he is capable of when fit and firing. Something that's probably putting off people this year when it comes to the Shrek selection is the addition of Luke Jackson. So we'll talk about Jackson in a sec, but to start off with Sean Darcy, what are your thoughts on selecting him in our sides this year, mate?
Look, you can't really scratch any of the rucks at the moment, can you? I mean, literally they're all in consideration. You just need, these dual ruck situations like what's happening at Melbourne with Gordon Grundy. It's, you only need a minor hamstring and, 3 or 4 weeks out, and we're considering jumping on the other one. So, look, Sean Darcy could work. He's kind of, I just find that 550, 560 price tag is just so hard. Like, you have to have someone that you're really sold on, like a Cogs, or even in that price range for defenders, it's that sort of 100 average. It's like, is there upside there? I'm sure. I mean, Darcy could. I mean, even with Jackson playing a bit part, I can see Darcy going back to a 110 guy. His body was letting him down a bit last year. That may happen again. Like, he just played the 19 games there. He shared with Meek a bit, who was kind of, when he did share with Meek, he was getting a much smaller percentage of the ruck than if he was just in there with Lob. So, I mean, you can factor that into his 102 average to see a bit of upside. At least we sort of know, well, we don't know exactly, but I would think that he will get the majority of the ruck time, and they'll try and mainly play Jackson forward. He will get more ruck time than a Lob. He's probably going to get 35, 40% of the ruck time. And then you're looking at Darcy at a sort of 65, maybe 60% split, depending on, who they're up against. Darcy will definitely take on the bigger bodied guys. And, maybe the ruckmen that are a little bit more get around the ground, like a Darcy Cameron or something. We might give Jackson a bit more of a run then, because he's a bit quick around the ground and he's got a good leap, and he's just a bit more athletic. So it will depend on matchups, but I do expect Darcy to do most of the rucking. And, look, if it wasn't for the Jackson factor, I think he'd be pretty highly owned with that ceiling. And he's just a good character to have in your SuperCoach team as well. Look at him. I mean, just look at that. I mean, seriously, apparently he's from a whole clan of them out in rural Victoria. And you imagine, like, Christmas at their place.
Like Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, mate. The beer had come in barrels off the back of a truck. They wouldn't even bother with the cans. They'd just sit next to a keg each at Christmas. They'd have their own, and they just like grab it on tap as they're going,
Imagine being able to hold a keg in one hand, probably the size of these blokes as well, mate. So no need for a glass or a can there.
They probably play 10-pin bowling with the kegs. But he's a good fella. I love having him there. I hope he hangs around. I think they're going to, at the end of his next contract, I think one of the Victorian clubs without a strong ruck line are going to be throwing big money at him to go back to Victoria.
Yeah.
We do have Jackson now, and we've got a few other developing rucks. But, I wouldn't be surprised if he went and took the big bucks on his next contract, because he's a player, and if his body stays right, they're going to want him back in Vic. But while we've got him, I think we've definitely got him for another couple of years. So while we've got him, I'm happy with that. He's not out of contention from my side. I will let you know why, but he's definitely someone you look at, maybe an upgrade during the year, if you can see that he's getting that good split of ruck time and he's doing damage. But I'd hate to come up against him. Imagine if you're some scrawny second-year ruck and you just look across and there's Shrek about to jump up and knee you in the head. Yeah, no thanks. But yeah. He's a good one to watch.
Well, you did mention that he's going to be at least around for the next couple of years. Someone that's going to be around for a lot longer than that's guaranteed is Luke Jackson. Obviously, a massive recruit that came across last year, 465,500 with that added DPP bonus of being a ruck forward. I've got the two ticks there, 58.2 from 6 games in his first year, up to 21 games, 71.6. And then 20 games last year, 84.5. So all tracking in the right direction there. He did have the 4 scores above 100, 16 scores, though, below 100, including 10 scores below 75. Season high of 137 with a season low of 52. Had 25% CBAs in the Pracky match. So again, we're not sure what that split is going to look like, but I know personally for me, I've been searching all pre-season for a bit of a stopgap in the rucks, and I've noticed that he is at close to an identical price to Darcy Cameron, who lots of other coaches are looking at the moment. We know that Darcy's had a few injury concerns in the pre-season, so could this be someone, if you are looking for a potential stopgap, or maybe not giving him enough credit here, even a potential keeper possibly in your forward line, is he someone that we could look at, do you think, Dan? And what are his prospects for 2023?
Well, Luke Jackson, they're calling him the unicorn at Freo because he could just be he could just be one of those players that it's very hard to replicate what he can do. He's 200 plus centimeters. He picks the ball up off his knees like a midfielder. He can tackle. He's got a huge leap, a lot of presence. And look at that trajectory. He's gone from 71 to 84 last year. He slowly each year got a little bit more ruck time. I remember, Max was, whatever, in 220, Max probably averaged 120 or something like that. And he dropped 10 points and Jackson had added it on, just due to their ruck split and stuff. It's really down to how well he gels as a forward, whether he can take that next step. If he gets, he could possibly get to that sort of 90, 95 this year, even as the second ruck, mainly forward. You know what I mean? Like, he's got that much talent. He does a lot of other stuff around the ground that other big guys don't do, like the tackling, like the contested marking. He's getting more and more confidence. They're going to look for him a lot. He's our new recruit. Everyone wants to make him feel welcome. So he's, similar to a Dawson last year at Adelaide. They're going to try and get the ball in his hands. They will give him a fair chunk of the ruck time. And he's actually someone I'm really seriously looking at that ruck 2 spot. Just because he's durable. We know his role. We know what he's got. We know there's upside if something does happen to Darcy. His ruck split's going to increase a lot. We saw that game when Gawn was out last year. He scored like a 125 or something. And it was against pretty decent opposition, if I remember rightly. So there's upside. There's definitely upside. And I don't really see him going too much backwards. I'd rather have him than Cameron at the moment. Cameron could break down. Cameron's a better forward than Cox. So if they are going to have that split of ruck, Cameron may spend more time forward than Cox. Cox on his day can take some grabs and everything. I find the problem with Cox is similar to a Ben Brown. He's just a liability once the ball hits the ground in that forward line. He's got no defensive game at all. He's not going to get to anyone to tackle them. They just walk straight around him. So someone like Luke Jackson's the opposite of that. You don't want him, you don't want to take him on. He's quite quick off the mark. He can tackle and he's quite agile. So a tick for me. Like you said, he's only got 25% of CBAs in practice match. You'd probably want him to get closer to that 35-40% of ruck time for him to really work as a minimum. If he is only getting 20-25% and playing mainly forward in that lob role, that's got to be something that is going to be a bit of a flag, and it may be harder for him to get those scores. So something to look at. I like his DPP, and I think he's a player for the future. Premiership player already. He's going to win. He's going to win 3 flags.
Oh, there we go. There's a prediction. There's a hot take right there. There's a hot take right there.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, certainly someone to keep a pretty close watch on in the next Pracky game in particular. And I was pretty impressed with what he did as well, mainly up forward, but certainly when he came into the ruck, looked phenomenal. Yeah. And you mentioned that possibly a future All-Australian. I don't think there's too many players in the comp that could be a future All-Australian as a ruck or a forward. Most of these ruckmen are much more capable ruckmen. Not terrific up forward, but he seems like he could be elite in both positions. So super exciting prospect, mate. Time to get into the forwards. And there's one forward that everybody's obviously talking about this preseason, and it is the former Brownlow medalist, double Brownlow medalist, Nat Fyfe, 313,600 available as I've got a forward mid. I normally refer to these players as a mid forward, but I'm going to put the forward first before the mid because it doesn't look like he's going to spend a heap of time there, mate. I don't believe, and I could be wrong, that he attended a CBA in the Pracky match. He spent the majority of time, if not all of his time, up forward. Did kick 3 goals, which was really nice. 2022, it was a bit of a write-off here. Didn't score above 100 in any of his 7 games. A season high, 96, so 4 points away. Got close enough, but a season low there of 32. Obviously, some injury-affected games thrown in there. We'll look at his SuperCoach history here, and all the way from basically 2011, he has been a premium. A couple of really nice averages in 2014 to 2015, above 120. We looked at 2019, another 120 average, but I was pretty surprised to see that he'd only had 3 years where he had averaged 120 plus. We compare that to someone like a Clayton Oliver, and there is a pretty substantial difference there. I think a lot of it is obviously due to his durability. If you look at the games played there, I've only circled 3 seasons, 2011, 2017, and 2019, where he's played 20 or more games. So that's always a concern with this bloke. But the major difference this year is simply his price. He comes at an absolute bargain for his potential. But the big question is, mate, how much can he average playing predominantly as a forward? What are your thoughts on Nat Fyfe at 313,600 in our starting sides this year, Dan?
Oh, look, how long's a piece of string? It's really hard to get a read on, isn't it? Few things. When I did my write-up for Freo in SuperCoach Talk, I did a little bit piece on Nat Fyfe, and I basically said, as soon as SuperCoach opened and you saw Nat Fyfe, 313K, he's available in the forward line. I mean, and you saw what happened last year with picks like Cogs and Brody and stuff, and you just whacked him in there. Like, it was just, this is the biggest no-brainer of the year. Fyfe at 313K. It's a gift. So, you know, you whack him in there, and I called it the Fyfe freeze. As soon as the news came out that he was going to mainly play as a forward, the Fyfe freeze came on, and everyone started getting a little bit cool on him. People are like, oh, what does he need to average actually to make his cash? You know, no one had really thought about that. They just expected he would. So, yeah, the numbers started getting thrown around, and there was a few doubts about it. And then you whack in his body and what he's, you know, he just hasn't managed to get on the park much the last, well, you look at that history and it's always been there. You know, he rarely has seasons where he can stay on the park for the full year. Those 120 plus averages you've circled up the top there in 14-15, they were Freo's best years. We've won more games in those 2 years than any other time in our history. So that probably had a lot to do with it. He would have had a lot to do with how we won some of those games. He's that sort of influential player. So there's scaling on top of scaling with Fyfe. The way he clears the ball and you know, his precise kicking, and he's just such a great aerialist. It's I think he possesses something that just not a lot of midfielders have got. Just he's a midfield bull with that aerial presence. He's pretty fleet of foot. He's got evasive skills for his height that not many players have. He is actually a unicorn. Sorry, Luke, but Fyfe is the other unicorn in the side. But getting on, I just don't know if you can pick him anymore. I won't be picking him initially. It's going to scare me if he comes and kicks a few bags of goals at the beginning. And, I mean, you know, how would you feel if he comes out with, say, an 85 week one and then, you know, gets close to the ton with, say, a 90, a 98 or something in the second week? His break evens, you know, negative 45, and you're looking at him like, you know, he's going to make. He just needs to stay on the park, and he's going to make sort of 80K in a week. It's like, it's going to be hard not to trade into him, but I think that's a mistake as well. Like, if you're not going to start him, you have to fade him for the year, because
You reckon it's one or the other?
Yeah, well, I mean, otherwise you're just wasting a trade, aren't you? Like, I mean, chances that you trade into him and then he gets a couple of 60s and injures himself and you've wasted 2 trades and you didn't get any of the good scores, and he's barely made any money. Is that's a more likely scenario to me than him just going on a run for say 6 or 8 weeks and making shit ton of money and pleasing his owners. So absolute great player. Even in Victoria they realise how good Fyfe is.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
He's appreciated across the footballing world. He's a bit of an interesting character.
A different cat, isn't he? Different cat. Yeah.
He's not. You're not. How do I put this? He's not your sort of typical macho footballer. He's not like a Ben Cunnington or a Laird, a rough head.
Yeah,
he sort of likes his fashion, and you can see him, going to the odd fashion show and hanging out with the models, and he's a little bit more of a stylish man. You see him in the Gucci sunglasses and stuff. He likes his man buns, and he's an interesting cat. But each to their own. That's the modern world. You let people be people. That's the other thing. Another reason not to pick him is he will get a good defender. You know what I mean?
That's right.
There's going to be someone on him, and our opposition coaches aren't going to let him, carve up the forward line and have his own way. So that's just something to talk about with him anyway.
Yeah, look, I think due to his age, durability, maybe in regards to durability, playing that forward role, it may be more beneficial to him. He's not going to be receiving so many heavy knocks. So, look, I could see this pick really going either way. I could see him being a successful pick and maybe just a mediocre pick. So I'm with you at the moment, mate. I'm not looking to start him. But I'll tell you what, if he kicks a bag of 5 and gets 15% CBA, the next practice match, he's going to tempt me, mate. But probably not for now for me anyway, mate. But are there any other forwards you think are going to be relevant this year? Anyone else you wanted to touch on before we begin to wrap things up, Dan?
Just quickly on Fyfe, I think he will get CBAs. I imagine him going in there when there's like 3 or 4 minutes to go at the end of a quarter. Okay, I think that's when they'll push him in there. When he's not going to have to do much work around the ground. There's 4 minutes to go. He can make an impact, maybe get a good clearance. If they want to give, say, a Sarong an extended break over quarter time, they'll take him off with 3 minutes to go. And do you know what I mean? Like if he just had so I think that's where they'll use him at centre bounce. I can't see him going in there at the beginning of quarters. I think structurally to take that good defender, I think he'll start forward every quarter. But I think I can see him getting pushed in there if he hasn't had too much of a look and just to get him involved in the game. They'll push him in for that last centre bounce in a quarter where he can maybe get a bit of a clearance and get a few touches and get amongst it. Where he's not going to have to play. Yeah, but not have to play midfield for 10 minutes after that. He's just literally goes in there and the siren goes, So I can see him doing that. On other forwards, there's a few guys. Liam Henry, looking at playing a wing role, very talented player. He's 202, 300, fighting it out with O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll's had some injury setbacks, so he may get a start. Josh Corbett, he's a bit of a depth player for us. I think he may get a run. If Tabernar or something goes down, we'll probably need another tall in there. We've got Josh Treacy as well, but he's 163K, but you just wouldn't touch him. Yeah, I think that's it. You've got to miss. Obviously, he broke out a little bit last year. He played a few games and he's too expensive as a key forward, but keep an eye on him. And a top-up player we got was Tom Emmett from the Sandful, 187 centimetres, 88 kilos, strong tackler, strong mark, medium forward type. Probably need a Schultz or something to go down to get a game, but they'll put him in our waffle side, and he just looks like just one of those bullocking forwards that can play a bit. It looks a bit like one of those country footballers that can kick 100 goals at full forward, and they're barely just over 6 foot tall. But he looks like one of those guys. He can play, but he might get a run if he gets a run later in the year, another downgrade target potentially.
Fantastic, mate. Well, I'll get this off the screen here.
I could just quickly give my best 22.
I was going to ask for this now. I was going to ask for this because I know you did say before we came on that you'd put a quick best 22 together for us, Dan. So very interested to hear a little bit about it, mate.
Yeah, okay. So at fullback, I've got Pearce, our new captain. Pretty reliable down there, takes the big balls and takes the best, sort of biggest bustling forward. Doesn't get up the ground too much. He'll sort of let Cox and these other defenders go with his man if his man wants to charge up the ground, and he'll just sit back and take the next best or whatever. But yeah, he's a good player. Luke Ryan in one pocket and Hayden Young in the other. I've got Young a little bit further back. You could put him on a half back flank, but I sort of like him there if he's going to be taking some kickouts and stuff, and he can take, a small or a medium-sized forward, so he's quite flexible in that role. Cox is centre half back with Clark and the speedy Walker on the flanks there. Walker's our only guy that can really handle those speedy small forwards, so he gets a gig. Clark's obviously a great kick guy from Geelong, played well last year. I think he's a player and he's a great get for us. Then in the centre, I've got Brodie. I just think he's better as a centreman. He can just, stay in there. He doesn't have to do too much running. Just stay in the square, Brodie. Get the clearance and just guard space. Let everyone else run around. H on the wing, and then fighting it out for the other wing and a bench spot. I've got O'Driscoll and Henry there. This is kind of before Hughes came into the picture, so it's a little bit up and down, but I'll probably chuck him on the bench. And then forward, I've got Amiss, Fyfe, and Walters as the half forwards. And then deep, I've got Schultz, Jackson, and Witowski. So that's kind of the then followers, obviously Darcy, Sarong, and Brayshaw.
Yep.
And then on the bench, you've got JOM, Jager O'Meara. You've got potentially Banfield, Hughes, and then maybe one of Johnson or Erasmus. Potentially Wagner as that other small defender if they're looking to go that way. If there's dangerous opposition with a couple of really dangerous small forwards, you'd probably think Wagner might get a gig, maybe even over someone like a Wilson. Wilson's a good kick and he's a pretty decent runner, but he's not that great defensively, if that makes sense. He's a real attacking halfback, but he doesn't tackle much and he's not much of a size and much of an aerial threat. So great user, probably depth for us. He'd probably need an injury or something before he gets done. But yeah, that's my best 22 for Freo going into this year. We'll see how accurate it is. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's when you're looking at this side, you've got Pearce, Ryan, Walters, and Fyfe as pretty much the only guy, and Jager on the bench, but they're the only guys that are over like 25 years old.
So pretty young side, yeah.
Aish is a bit older. So the majority of our team are in that sort of 20 to 24 age group, which I think is fantastic going forward. I mean, when they all start getting into that sort of 80, 100 game mark, that's when I can see us really pushing for premierships. Just quickly before I go, I just want to thank everyone at SuperCoachTalk.com, all my buddies over there. They gave me a chance to start writing for them just a couple of years ago. I was always on there commenting, and they have some great content. I do the Rare Gems post, which is about pods and stuff. So if you are after a point of difference during the year, get on and check us out. There's captains every week and quite a few, we have game threads, and so you can comment on different players and stuff. So it's a great site to get on and have a bit of a tinker around on. So I recommend everyone do that. And, so that's it really. Follow me on Twitter or whatever. I love a follow on Twitter. So.
Well, I can certainly back that up with SuperCoachTalk.com, because if it wasn't for those blokes and that website, I wouldn't have started to make content. I really got encouraged from a lot of regular users to start producing my own stuff. And when I first started playing SuperCoach, that was the first community that I got involved with. And I could not recommend it, any more higher than what I do. There are a bunch of absolute legends there as well.
And just so many guys that are that passionate, and they're all doing it for peanuts, and they put so much work into it. The amount of statistical information that there's guys that just, I'm not sure what they do with their time, or they must be like, professional gamblers or something, just sit at the poker table in the night and then just spend the rest of the day doing SuperCoach research, because there's no way that you could come up with that much information. And we've got the coaches box there, which is just constantly blurting out the latest quotes or injuries or, whatever's going on Twitter and stuff as well. So it's a pretty comprehensive site for SuperCoach, and I recommend everyone go check it out. Another one I just want to quickly mention is SuperCoach Edge. Those guys are quite a new channel. I'm not sure if you checked them out. I'd like you to. And just get as much info as you can. I mean, the old do your own research has got a bit of a bad name with the anti-vaxxers and stuff. But I think when it comes to SuperCoach, you can do your own research and look for people that you kind of get their vibe, and don't agree with everything everyone says. Everyone's got a different take on things. Make your own narrative in your head about why you want to pick someone, and have fun with it as well. It's like we're all not going to be in with a shot, after 5 or 6 weeks of winning the whole thing, but we can all have fun for the whole year. So pick players that you like watching. If it's a toss up, you've done all your stats and you think they're probably going to average, about the same, and there's not really any difference to your buy structure, then just pick the player you like to watch, because I think you want to have fun with it. You want to be cheering on people that you enjoy them doing well. And I think that's it really. Thanks for having me on, really. And look forward to maybe getting on and doing a sword play with you, or one of these other podcasts during the year. I did have a bit of a quick chat with Spills off air yesterday about getting on and doing one of them. He seems pretty keen, and maybe even Janath, or we can all get on there together and talk a bit of strategy, maybe closer to the very beginning of the season, after the last pracky matches. And who knows, we can maybe even do a team reveal or something like that. But I will be doing my team reveal on at supercoachtalk.com, and explaining why I've picked players and what structure I've gone with, and all of that. So I'll be doing that probably with about a week to go in the season. So after the last practice matches, you'll get to see that. But it's always interesting, and look forward to it. Thanks, mate. We've rambled on a bit. It's been a bit of a long one. You might have to go back and edit some of it, but we'll see how we go.
It's been a bloody great discussion, mate. And everyone, make sure, if you are on Twitter, make sure that you do give Dan a follow. I'll put all of his socials down the bottom, and a link to supercoachtalk.com as well. But mate, cannot thank you enough. Good luck to your Dockers this year. I certainly think you're capable of another top 4 finish, and possibly do some damage in the finals as well. So Dan, thanks very much for joining us, mate, and can't wait to chat again soon, mate. Good on you, mate.